Story 1. My mother has always found blame a comforting way of dealing with my illness. When I was 7 and got pneumonia, she said, "Well, you don't take care of yourself. What do you expect?" When I had post-traumatic stress disorder-related depression for 2 years after a sexual assault, she said, "Of course you don't feel good. You need to get better sleep." I've been depressed too. I started paying attention to my sleep and I got over it. Fast forward to age 28. I desperately wanted a pregnancy that we tried for a year to achieve, and I miscarried but didn't know for weeks. I was carrying a deceased baby until it decomposed inside me. I was living in another country, very healthy but heartbroken. When I told her I had lost the baby, she said, "Well, you don't take care of yourself. What do you expect?" She could not show an ounce of sympathy, empathy, or kindness. It is not even close to the worst thing she has done to me, but it is typical of how she talked to me. Story 2. You are not my real child. The real you died when you were 3 and never came back. You are broken. I feel sad when I see you. You are a different person. I am still hoping the real you will come back one day. I miss my real child. Story 3. When I confided in her that I was bulimic at 17, she looked at me and replied, "Well, it isn't working." Story 4. You might as well charge $20 on the street for it, my father said to me at 16, after I was basically date raped. It left a lifelong scar. Story 5. I left my family and was considered selfish for moving away as soon as I turned 18. My family was and still is emotionally and physically abusive. We went bankrupt and lost our house, which did not have electricity or hot water for years prior. Story 6. When I was 10 years old, I clearly had depression but did not understand that my heartache and panic attacks were due to it. I told my mom how I felt and that I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs to feel better. She almost hit me and said it was wrong for me to say that. She warned that I would be severely punished if I did it again. Throughout my childhood, she instructed my siblings on how to bully me, and if I acted out, I would be severely punished. Story 7. You have a dirty character. You only think of yourself. Whenever I set a small boundary, your friends don't like you. There is a reason you feel lonely. Men hate women who show too much affection. Stop giving your boyfriend so much love. He will leave you. Men don't like tall women. I am 1.80 meters. You were never anorexic because you were never thin. I was underweight because he made me anorexic. When I had a date, he said, "You will get properly hurt." And generally, all my symptoms of now diagnosed complex post-traumatic stress disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder were just me being lazy, partying too much, not having discipline, etc. Although I was an A-grade student at one of the best universities in the world in the political science field. But I guess the last ones are ordinary experiences for people with mental health issues. The list is long, and I forgot the worst things. That is just average stuff that I remember from the last couple of years. The worst thing is that he often combined compliments with criticism, except in a fight, and then when I would defend myself he would say, "But I say so many good things about you," which confused me a lot. He once told his sisters to be husband right before the marriage. Do you know you are marrying a liar? I was not the only one he traumatized. I know now he is a malignant narcissist and I was emotionally abused. Took me 25 years to figure it out. Story 8. My dad said he was ashamed to talk about me to his coworkers because I was working a minimum wage job. Typical baby boomer. He left school without any qualifications and walked right into a good job, the kind of job I would need a degree for and have to compete with hundreds of applicants to get. Story 9. My mom told me that I was just like my dad and beyond help. She said that if I killed myself, it would make the world a better place, though she later denied this and said I was too emotional. This happened as I was expressing suicidal thoughts after my brothers had repeatedly suicide baited me. They did this because my mom encouraged them to, and because I had expressed being suicidal. My mom's initial reaction was to tell me to do it if living here was so bad, and to accuse me of manipulating her when I told her I was suicidal because of the way she treated me, among other things. I went into foster care for a reason and am still recovering from her abuse. And you know what? I am a lot like my dad, who has made a huge effort to get his life together and who was also abused by my mom. Story 10. Reading all of these comments makes me so sad. I am so sorry to everyone who has heard these awful things from the people who were supposed to support and lift you up. Please know that you are your own person, and your worth is not defined by their words. Sending love and strength to everyone here. Story 11. My mum has upset me badly twice. Once on holidays, she wouldn't stop tickling me, and it triggered an anxiety attack. I started crying and couldn't breathe. I felt really helpless because I yelled for her to stop over and over. When she realized I was crying and told her I had asked her to stop, she said, "When we get home, you need to see a doctor. There's something wrong with you." I went and cried in the bathroom. Later, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression a few weeks after. The other time, I got into a selective school for years 11 and 12. I didn't do well. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression a few weeks into the school year after having severe physical responses to situations causing anxiety. I went to therapy and tried medication. It was a really hard time for me. I struggled and barely passed my exams. A few years later, I told my mom that sometimes I felt bad for taking a spot that someone else might have used better. She said, "Good, you should feel bad. Someone lost an opportunity because of you." Story 12. I did not even want to adopt you. Your father wanted you, not me. I had to sit on my hands when you were a baby so I would not harm you. Yes, Mommy Dearest was a real piece of work. Story 13. My father threatened to murder me multiple times over a 3-hour period. I was 14 years old at the time, just a skinny little teenager. He called me all the names under the sun in between threats to kill me. As you can imagine, my life prior to this situation was not exactly pleasant. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. When my mother came home after work, she saw me cowering in the corner of my bedroom. She then went into my parents' bedroom, got the 410 shotgun, loaded it, and came back into the hallway where my father was. She pointed the shotgun at his head and said, "If I ever see anyone like that again, I'll blow your head off." And that was the end of the situation. It was never spoken about again until decades later when I confronted my father about it over the phone. He flat out denied it ever happened and tried his best to gaslight me. All of this happened because my father thought I was gay. Story 14. I literally cannot remember any of my childhood, so I do not know. However, I do remember when I was diagnosed with depression, my dad laughed and said, "You are not depressed. What do you have to be depressed about?" Story 15. I told my mother I was pregnant with my oldest child. She asked me what I was going to do about it. I told her that I planned the pregnancy. She said, "What in hell did you do that for?" I really wish I had come to the realization much earlier in my life that my parents did not want to be grandparents any more than they wanted to be parents. Story 16. When I called my father to tell him I was feeling severely depressed, he said, "And what am I supposed to do about it?" I immediately hung up and have not spoken to him for over 2 years. Story 17. My abusive sister berated me in therapy until I was sobbing and begged for my mother. My mother said I deserved what my sister was doing and that calling her mother proved my crying was manipulation. I do not have a mother now. It has been a year, and I have never once regretted it. I am so much happier and less afraid in every way. Story 18. I was 10. My mother said through gritted teeth, "I had to buy the biggest size. You need to lose weight." I did not know anything about diets or healthy eating. I was a child and she controlled what I ate at that time. She was so unkind and unreasonable. Story 19. My dad told me that if I had been a screaming or misbehaving child, he would have hit me. He was abusive during my childhood. I witnessed him slapping my mum and pulling her hair. I was very shy and scared and had trouble expressing my needs because I was afraid of how he, and to be fair my mum too, would react. The constant unpredictability was gut-wrenching and led to me being in therapy for half of my life. I am still trying to get over it. I was quiet and easy because I was afraid, and that fear earned me the most compliments. After he said what he said, I felt very bad. It made me aware of my survival mode and how necessary it was. I love my dad, but sometimes it is difficult to like him. Story 20. I spent the first decade of my life being told that it is okay to be whoever I am and that I would never be judged for anything. Then, when I finally came out as bisexual to my mother when I was 12, she laughed at me to my face, told me I was too young to know, and made fun of me to my stepfather and probably others. Story 21. Frequently, my mother told me she wished I was never born, that she wished she could give me away, and that she wished I wasn't hers. She said I looked like my father. This came from an extremely bitter and violent divorce. She told me I would never become anyone worthwhile and that I didn't deserve anything, often while beating me in a steady rhythm. A few girlfriends also shared her opinion of me with me, saying I wouldn't achieve much and had no future prospects. One girl even said, "Your mother is evil, and you should spend as little time around her as possible." Another girl confirmed the same. Therapy has helped. Story 22. I would not be able to love you if you gained any weight. I told her that every time she commented on my weight, I was having a donut, not really, and she stopped. However, she was fixated on appearance. You could tell her about the greatest school or work achievement, and her reply would be that you need to get your eyebrows done. Part of this stemmed from her issues, as she had been impacted by her father telling her her face looked like a round moon shining over the fence. She did not want that for us. She also constantly told me to be quiet if I tried to talk to her when there were better things or people around. I counted to 30 in the first 30 minutes after seeing her for the first time in 6 months. She did apologize once she realized I was counting and asked why. But it was a pattern. Sit there silently until she was ready for me. Story 23. My dad and I were in therapy when I was about 14 to deal with how his anger problems affected me. The therapist gave us a code word to use when he was starting to get worked up, something we would not use in everyday conversation. It was rubber chicken. I tried using it one time. He got even angrier and yelled, "Don't give me that rubber chicken nonsense." To this day, at age 35, I avoid conflict or just stay silent because I used that as a defense when he got mad. This makes working out issues with my wife very difficult. Story 24. No wonder your father did what he did to you. She was referring to the time my father locked me in the house when I was 15 and held me at knife point, screaming that he was going to kill me and my younger brother, and now it was time to die. She was drunk again and angry that I had poured her wine down the sink. Story 25. My stepfather never said anything cruel, but he managed to destroy my self-confidence one disapproving look at a time. I was eating an orange. He walked past me with his cheeks puffed out. I was not overweight. I was eating a piece of fruit. I am not sure what he was trying to tell me, but it summarized his parenting style perfectly. Story 26. My mom calls me nasty and cruel all the time, even though I have never been either of those things to her. Story 27. Screaming at me for some tiny infraction like accidentally stacking the dishes incorrectly. Me. Well, I'm sorry I'm not perfect. Parent. Well, you're not perfect enough. That moment was a turning point for me. Another time, I didn't finish my burger at a restaurant because I have severe stomach issues, and they gave me cheese by accident, which makes it much worse. In the parking lot, I got growled at with a voice full of hate through gritted teeth. That was pathetic. Coming home for the first time in months, I was sat down on a chair outside. Parent launched into an hour-long abusive rant, starting with finger wagging in my face and seething with rage. You have been a horrible daughter. One of the main reasons I am so horrible? I don't visit or call home often enough, wonder why. Apparently, I also sat in the wrong chair at dinner after a major renovation rearranged the whole layout of the main floor, and I should have known not to sit where I sat in the new setup. Maybe not the worst things you could hear, but as an undiagnosed autistic kid who was diagnosed with many mental health conditions, who in their right mind would think, I know how to fix this suicidal kid's problems. I'll make sure they know they have to be perfect in every single way, red minds or else I'll hate them. Story 28. My mom saw a text on my phone when I was 16 from a friend asking if my boyfriend and I had broken up because she saw me walking with my male best friend to a shared class. Mom asked, "Do you want people to think you are a bad person?" Story 29. Sometimes I wish you weren't my daughter, or gay people don't deserve life, after I came out to them. Story 30. I hate every single one of you. Having children ruined my life. This was an oft-repeated phrase while she furiously vacuumed around our feet as we watched television after school. Story 31. I really don't know what is wrong with her, said my father to my mother after I expressed unhappiness over the financial abuse that was happening. I moved away as soon as I could, and they are trying to improve, but there are some things that cannot be forgotten. Story 32. It wasn't said to me, but I overheard my mother talking on the phone to my sister. She was explaining why she had been extra suspicious of me, going through my room, my bag, and so on. She said, "She has been acting happy and almost normal. Not depressed at all, so I knew something was wrong." That is what she said verbatim. Story 33. We cannot afford to help you pay for college, and we will not co-sign any applications for loans. We also will not give you our financial data because the college will tell us we absolutely have to help you. It is a sink or swim world. On a transition, what is the best thing my parents ever did for me? See above. I learned to swim. Story 34. My mother told me I was pathetic and would never have friends if I stayed so stuck up. I was 12 and had severe social anxiety. The same person told me I was fat when I gained a few pounds after being put on medication for my mental health issues. Some of my depressive episodes were so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. My father came into my room one day and said he was convinced I was depressed because no boy wanted me, and that I should wear more dresses and skirts and just be more girly in general. He said that would fix my problems. I was 17 and struggling with suicidal thoughts. I really did not need that unnecessary and false comment on top of everything. Story 35. Well, there was the time my mother told me she hated me at age 8, the time my sister told me that I deserved to be raped at age 16. I had just been raped and been through the whole police process and trauma. The time my stepfather told me I was going to end up like my mother, with 3 children around my ankles before I turned 20 at age 17, he was wrong. I had 1 child at age 39, and the time my brother told me I should make him happy before myself at age 33. Oh, and the time my biological father told me he felt more like a brother to me than a father at age 14. Family. You cannot choose them, unfortunately. Luckily for me, I strongly believe that friends are family you choose for yourself, and I have been very fortunate with the solid support network I have gathered over the years. As long as you treat others how you would wish to be treated, and always endeavor to separate the good from the toxic influences in your life, you will end up with kind, loving, and amazing people around you. It still takes work, though. You cannot just sit back on your laurels expecting people to come to you. Story 36. My dad once told me, "You were the reason your mom and I stopped being happy." I was maybe 11 and had no idea what to do with that information, but I said sorry. I am 23 now, and I still catch myself apologizing to people just for existing. Story 37. My parents had an awful, tempestuous marriage. Childhood memories of them being raging, resentful, violent, interspersed with periods of icy rage-driven silent treatments. Walking on eggshells was not enough to stay safe, as my mother would turn her rancor and frustration onto me. It was not uncommon for me to be punished for unspoken thoughts. She was irrationally convinced that she knew exactly what I was thinking, and denial of any such thoughts only made her angrier, as she would accuse me of lying and say, "I know you better than you know yourself," or "What did I ever do to deserve a kid like you?" A similar story occurred when she didn't like my facial expression or the way I looked at her. After violent physical and verbal arguments, my father would go off on his own for hours on end, saying he wasn't coming back. My mother would retreat upstairs, rage crying and threatening to pack her bags and leave for good. This threat was very real, as she did stay away for weeks at a time with old friends after some blistering rows, leaving my brother and me at home from early school age. As a child, I would desperately try to comfort her, but always got physically pushed away and dismissed with the words, "It's your fault. If you hadn't been born, I would walk out, but I have to stay because of you." Lifelong people-pleasing, submissive behavior, obsequious fawning, and self-hatred were learned very young as survival tactics. Story 38. From 8th grade through my senior year in high school, I ran track and cross country. I was on the varsity team from my freshman year through senior year. I also ran several 5-kilometer races each year, consistently placing in the top 10 overall in each race, with my times being around 16 minutes. I was 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighed between 150 and 160 pounds. During my junior year, I was having trouble getting my mile times under 4 minutes and 45 seconds, and I expressed that to my parents one day. My dad's response was, "If you lose weight, you should be able to run faster since you won't be carrying around as much weight." Story 39. I was 6 years old, getting beaten for spilling my milk. Strangely, I ended up having a better relationship with my father, who was a violent alcoholic, than with my mother. Story 40. The best part of you ran down your father's leg. Just, oof. Estimated time of arrival. My mother said it in jest. It was just extra savage. Story 41. I was called a bunch of racially motivated insults, but it doesn't matter anymore because it has become comedy. Story 42. For me, it was my mom telling me things I did not want to know about the lead up to my birth and the difficult years they had early on. She framed it as wanting to hear it from her first. She was in her 20s and just divorced, and my dad was long divorced, happily so, and 19 years older than her. He initially rejected her advances, but she wore him down after a while, and they got together at a large drunken party he was throwing, because that was kind of his thing. I came along unplanned, which caused a big upset. She wanted an abortion, but he talked her out of it. She later learned some serious things my dad got in trouble for between the Vietnam War and when they met, information that changes how you view a person. Now, I somewhat understand. They did not know how to handle disagreements and were both all escalation with no compromise. They never became physically violent, but they fought fiercely for several years. She packed our things and moved us out twice when I was very young. He would get drunk and start airing his grievances, some probably justified, and it would be on. But knowing my dad for over 40 years, we have grown close. The drinking stopped by the time I was in elementary school, but he remained a stubborn man with a temper. However, he has a great heart, and I have never once seen him act in bad faith or intentionally hurt somebody. He would get mad and yell if provoked, but he would never tell me things like that. He is far kinder than that. Story 43. Kids were staring at me, a fat kid, from their bus while I stood next to my mom at the bus stop. She said, "They were staring at you because you're wearing a sleeveless shirt. They can see your flabby arms." She also once organized a hearing test for me because I would not listen. The audiologist was not happy. It was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Laugh out loud. Still, it feels like these are not so bad once I type them out. I am sure people have worse. I am sure if I kept going, I could find worse. Story 44. I have grown up overweight and had a large tummy. My mom once saw me changing and said, "Ugh, before you get married, I am going to have you get surgery." No man would like that. I was 15. I am 28 and have never been in a relationship because, well, why would someone want me if my mom thinks my body is so disgusting? Story 45. Is it weird that I still remember it? I was about 11 years old when my father called me a spoiled brat. I do not remember the context, but in my opinion, it was not serious enough to warrant such insults. Story 46. I don't remember clearly. There is so much that it is easy to become complacent and forget a lot of it. I know my mother had a sad conversation with me when I was 13 about how she hated and was terrified that her child might be gay, as in actual fear of gay people. Undoubtedly, I was deeply affected by it. What a nutcase. Story 47. My stepdad called me clueless for wanting to play with my Legos instead of going to meet some professional rugby players with him. I was 6. Story 48. It's what my mother did not say to me that I recall most clearly. Any form of positivity, encouragement, or indication of love. Story 49. Overthink if you ever want to get children. Basically, every time I did something wrong in my teens, it was so casual for me that I needed therapy to be told that this is not normal or okay to say to your own child. Story 50. My father would constantly belittle me, call me useless, guilt-trip me at any chance he had, and be aggressive if things were not done the way he wanted. Typical narcissistic and bipolar behavior. It is so aggravating that I find it hard to remember events from my teenage years in detail, even while writing this. I believe it is due to constant trauma and stress. I have been living on my own for around 5 years now, having just turned 30 a week ago. Only after I managed to leave could I begin my healing process. What I think takes the cake and lives rent-free in my mind is when I was going through a breakup while engaged. And he said, "How did you expect to actually be married if you were not even worth a damn?" That is at least among my top 3 worst moments. Story 51. High school was very difficult for me. I gave my mother a letter saying that if I went back, I would harm myself. I returned the next day and did not succeed that night. Story 52. Why don't you go live with your father? See how supportive he is. My mother, after a gender therapy appointment to start hormone replacement therapy and not receiving the letter yet, 3rd visit. My father sexually abused me multiple times when I was 4. Story 53. My mom told me I was just very average when I was 14 and was overcoming my confidence issues and low self-esteem. Story 54. I wish I had never had you children. Think of what I could be if I did not have the 2 of you weighing me down. When my parents divorced, my mother went from being a stay-at-home mom to pursuing a degree. That degree, initially intended to help her get a job to support us, became an obsession that she relentlessly pursued. During my high school years, she was not around much, and when she was, she often lamented that she had to take care of us and that we were holding her back. It was really hard to hear. Story 55. I'm sure my mother said a lot of things that I have just forgotten or blocked out, but there is one that sticks out. I was 28 and lamenting to my mother about how I was single and lonely. She looked me dead in the face and told me that it was because I was too fat and no one wanted to date an obese person because obese people are ugly. It was a wild thing to say, especially since at the time I was not overweight. It also implied that she thought I was ugly because I was not skinny. I started to cry, and my dad came in and was shocked when he heard what she said. "Why would you say that to someone you love?" he asked. That day, there was a shift in our relationship. I do not think she even realized it, but she was no longer someone I felt safe confiding in. Story 56. Around 7 or 8, while my parents were separating, I was unsure if I should ride with my dad on his bicycle. I thought the bicycle was cool, but I wanted to avoid any confrontation. I told my mother I thought bicycles were just another form of transportation. When I saw my dad that weekend, and my mother shared what I said, he told me, "Maybe you are not the son I thought you were." We then got dinner and did not talk about it again until I was about 15. Story 57. When my mother found out I had sex in college, she called me a little slut and said that no decent man would ever want me now. There was a lot of Christian guilt growing up. Story 58. I used to love singing and wanted to be an actor or singer when I grew up. My mother told me I cannot sing and I am just okay at acting. Story 59. My mom used to blame me for her boyfriend beating her up. I was 8 years old. At 16, I snapped, pepper sprayed her boyfriend, and hit him with a chair. I have not looked back since. Story 60. There are many memories, but the first one that comes to mind was when I was in the 1st grade, so I would have been either 6 or 7. My mom would wake me up for school and then go back to bed. I would get myself ready and head out the door for the bus. One morning, I was running late because I couldn't find my other shoe. By the time I found it and walked out the door, I saw my bus driving away. My bus stop was at the end of our driveway. I knew I messed up and was going to be in a lot of trouble. I went upstairs to wake my mom and tell her I missed my bus. As I expected, she went ballistic. She started screaming at me and told me how irresponsible I was, saying, "Why didn't you set your outfit out the night before like you're supposed to?" I replied, "I did. I just forgot about getting my shoes out." She got out of bed and grabbed the belt. I bent over the bed to receive 3 smacks. Afterward, she grabbed my arm, put me in my room, and told me to put my pajamas back on because she was not taking me to school. As she left my room and went to hers, she yelled, "Stupid kid," and slammed her door. Before anyone asks, my sister is no contact with her, and I have very minimal contact. As soon as we could, my sister and I moved out of state. Story 61. I told my mother I tried to kill myself because of her abusive behavior again. Instead of stepping back and realizing she has been a terrible person, she doubled down and said she does not believe me because I have said it before and tried before. Maybe, just maybe, you could be a better person then. Story 62. I gave your father oral sex and used a turkey baster to get pregnant with you so he would not leave me. What was the point of telling me that? Story 63. I think what hurts me the most, more than any word or any act of violence that my parents said or did, is the look of hate in their eyes, the disgust for literally just existing sometimes. Story 64. I think what hurts me the most, more than any word or act of violence that my parents said or did, is the look of hate in their eyes, the disgust for literally just existing sometimes. They have changed today, but I cannot change my memories. Story 65. Our high school band was being loaded onto buses to go to a competition. We were a large band, requiring 7 Trailways buses to transport us. While loading, some of my classmates asked my mother if I was her daughter. She said no and that she did not know who I was. Story 66. Hard to pinpoint the cruelest, but the earliest memory I have is when I was about 5 or 6, wearing my bathing suit at my grandmother's. She said to me, "Stomach out or butt out, you can't have both." I developed severe hourglass syndrome as a teenager, which I am still trying to correct in my 30s as a result of her constant fat phobia. Story 67. Your presence is like your absence, my father said. You are my first shock, my mother said. I am her firstborn. Story 68. I just failed 2 semesters, which was dumb. I heard many things from my mom that I never thought I would hear. The worst was when she said I could do whatever I want. Jump, smoke, do drugs, or even die, and she still wouldn't care because she has other children. All of this happened just because I failed. But it turns out she was just angry. Story 69. You were a mistake, but I suppose I loved you when you arrived. She said this to me and my youngest brother. My middle brother was planned. She and the rest of my family thought it was funny. I was devastated. Story 70. It is minor compared to many things here, but when I was 15, my father told me I could go to hell because I wanted to sit with my friends at school instead of my little sister. I found out over a decade later that he had several drug addictions, among other issues, and we are no longer in contact. I still miss the man he was before the drugs, but he stopped being that man a long time ago. Story 71. Throwaway account just in case they happen to see this. I'm from a large family. I am the middle child. They gave me to my aunt when I was 2. None of the others, just me. On the outside, my aunt took great care of me. I was well behaved, well turned out, dressed beautifully. But she could be a cruel woman at times. My parents were not good people either, and she hated my mom. Some of her best lines: "Never have kids, you will be just like your mama. You're selfish." I was about 6 when she started saying this. "What color are my lips?" "They're blue." "You are killing me." I had asked for a rest between doing chores when I was 10. Here she is, 10-ton Tessie. I was overweight because she overfed me at meals. "I'm sending you back to your mom and dad. I'm gonna get the suitcase. They didn't want you, but they can have you back." I was about 7. I don't remember what I did. She grabbed a suitcase and put it by the door. I think the cruelest thing was when she would make me stand there whenever we met anyone she knew in public and would tell them all about how I was the worst kid in the world. I was badly behaved, I talked back. She didn't know what she had done so wrong to end up with a kid like me. This is a small snapshot. Let's just say, my therapist will probably take several big vacations with the amount of issues she left me with. Story 72. My adoptive mom when I was 12. She used to say she would send me back to my birth parents whenever she was mad at me, but it never happened despite her knowing how much I wanted to live with my dad. One day, she hit me in the face with a broom because I did not wash the dishes correctly. As I was crying, she said, "You were standing there crying, but you can get out of my house if you think you would be better off with your dad or in residential care where someone can hurt you every night and stick broomsticks up your private parts. Then there is the door. You can leave with the clothes on your back. Just go." I did end up actually leaving that day. It was such a cruel thing to say that even though our relationship is better and I am in my 30s, I remember it clearly. I can picture where we were standing, what we were wearing, everything. Story 73. No one will love you if you are overweight. My mother would never admit she said such a thing, but she did. I remember it even years later. Story 74. If I put you up for adoption, your profile would say that you are pretty and smart, but also mean and nasty, so no one would take you. Story 75. You were always so bothersome, even as a child. That should have made me cry, but I guess I didn't because I am used to her cruel words. Story 76. It was my 23rd birthday, and I was cleaning the house. I ended up breaking the carpet cleaner when my stepdad came home. He said, "You never get anything right. It's why Mom couldn't make it." I had lost my mom months before my birthday. I stopped what I was doing and went into my room. I just wanted to clean, and I was doing everything correctly. I understand carpet cleaners are expensive, but what he said to me was unforgivable. Story 77. There is nothing more I regret in this life than having you. These were the last words I heard my mother speak to me in person. Story 78. No one wants to celebrate your birthday. They only want to celebrate grandma's. Her birthday was 4 days after mine. My mom felt awful afterward because of how much it hurt me, but unfortunately, it was true. Story 79. Growing up, my parents divorced when I was under 1 year old. They hated each other and made that clear to me, constantly speaking negatively about one another. My mother told me that my father had abused her when I was in elementary school. She then said I was becoming like my father, which was difficult to hear. Story 80. I understand. I did the same with mine about 5 years ago. I also regret not doing it much earlier in my life. So many wasted years. Story 81. My dad, when I asked him to get my nightstand from the basement. I did not ask very nicely because I was 11 or 12. He said, "Yes, because you are a spoiled little princess who gets whatever she wants." Then he kicked the cabinets in a fit of rage, breaking 3 of them. Story 82. It was many things, but the one I have seared to my brain was after a swimming competition. I won many gold medals and just 1 silver. My dad casually said, "You know what they say, second place is only the first loser." He said it jokingly, but I was tired and had worked so hard to be in my best shape, and it felt like it was all for nothing. I told him once a few years ago, and he didn't even remember saying that. Story 83. I was 8 years old and said I needed a doctor. 10 years later, my doctor said I have had generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, and major depression since before I was even 8. Story 84. Me and my brother exist. She was drunk as usual. On the phone. I just wish I could die so I could be with your brother. My brother died of sudden infant death syndrome in 1989. I was born in 1990 and my brother in 1991. This was said in 2012. She had children to try to fix her grief, but the grief never went away. I say we, but I became the focus of her severe depression and mood swings. Stuff like this was always said, but that one always stuck. I told her, that is an insane thing to say to your child. Insults started being thrown. You don't understand, you little. It wasn't until she complained about the altercation to her friend, and the friend said, that's a really messed up thing to say to your child, that she backed down and admitted to being horribly out of line. Both parents also let a drug-dealing pedophile groom me, drug me, abuse me, and nearly take me to Germany for sex trafficking. When asked about it, their response was either, you were a difficult kid and it gave us peace. I was 10 to 13 with undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or I had to fight my stepfather. My mother actually took herself to therapy for this. It was never suggested for me, and I had to support her upon her return home because, during a group therapy session, someone called my mother out and said how disgusting it was to let that happen with so little reason and zero accountability. She cried, and I tried to support her despite the fact that she allowed a pedophile to drug and abuse her son. It's no wonder I have such an odd view of the world. Sorry for rambling. I started and couldn't stop. Story 85. Why didn't you die, even after I fell so many times with you in my womb? Parents say, go die. to their kids all the time, but the moment the kid says, "I don't want to live," they suddenly ask, "Why? You have everything." Kids these days are such losers. They can't handle anything. We had to cross rivers to go to school. And you're sad because I said you are like your father. They never understand the pain of their child. Story 86. I tried on a Hollister polo when I was a kid, but it did not fit. I told my mother that it did not fit me, and she said, "Yes, they do not want overweight people wearing their clothes." It still stings. Story 87. My dad said I was a failure and would never amount to anything. He even said I failed at being aborted. Well, I'm still alive and he's dead. Story 88. If you had come first, we would not have had another. This was told at my 4th birthday party. At least that is the first time I heard it. It was a joke, it is funny, but I am far too sensitive. That joke was repeated my whole life. Story 89. While trying to plead with my mother about starting depression medications and changing her habit of drinking too much and isolating herself, she said, "Why can't you just be more like your sister?" The same sister who never confronts her about her problems because, in her words, she just does not care. But I took that loud and clear, "Mom, I will not bother trying to help her change anymore. I understand I should not try to make someone change. They need to want to on their own." However, I always thought if she knew how much it hurt me to see her unwell, maybe it would be motivation enough to change. It is hard to see your family member, especially a parent, do this to themselves. This is not the first time she has asked me to be more like my sibling. Story 90. When I was about 12, my mother said to me quite lightly, "I do not want to have a son earning minimum wage," which silently shocked me at the time. I am 45 and worked for minimum wage for a major part of my life, but my mother never remembered saying that. I have a better job situation nowadays, but the phrase still haunts me from time to time. Story 91. As an adult diagnosed on the autism spectrum, I'm the one who knows what's best for you. You can't live alone. Your sister can because she has her own life. If you want to live alone, you will never see your pets or your family. No one will give you a job. I cried once in a store because the employee said that my daughter had something. Story 92. How do you think I feel? I just loved you the wrong way. My biological father when I confronted him. Story 93. I was home for college break, doing a grocery run with my mom. She started telling me all the things I should be doing. We got into an argument about how controlling she is. At some point, she yelled, "I wish you were never born." I didn't miss a beat. I yelled back, "I wish I was never born too. But guess what? Now I'm here and I have to do all this. Go to school, graduate, get a job, work until I'm dead. I don't want to be here either. But that was your choice." She stopped and just stared at me. She didn't have anything to say for once. I thought, finally, we agree on something, Mother. Fast forward to me at 38 being diagnosed with major depressive disorder. Who would have thought? Story 94. I would have been shocked if my mother had said a kind thing to me. I think the worst part was that she was arguing with my father and made sure to let me know that the only time he did not want oral sex was when he was drunk. The result is that all of us children, 7 in total, were a result of her being raped by my father when he was drunk. Story 95. My mother told me that my friends were not actually my real friends. They just felt sorry for me because I do not have a personality. Story 96. I overheard my mother telling the nurse who took my sexual assault kit samples that I was probably lying. I was 5 years old. Story 97. When Fortnite went down on Apple devices, my parents accused me of causing it to my brother's iPad, who was a little kid and freaking out. My father told me he did not want to ever look at me again. Rough. The other, much worse incident was when my parents caught me reading 50 Shades of Grey. They said I would grow up abusing women. Like, forget off. Story 98. My mother told me I did it to myself when I told her I was dismissed from surgical technology school over a minor handbook mistake. I never saw her the same way again. Story 99. You're just like your mother. At my wedding, you definitely take after our side of the family. You have no wrinkles at all, just dark circles under your eyes. Story 100. I was about 15, walking up to the dance shop, and my mother said I needed to pull in my stomach because I looked unattractive. I have flared ribs as an adult because she taught me to pull in my stomach starting at the age of 10. Story 101. Your work only attracts miserable people. I was told when I mentioned my potential health concerns due to chronic headaches. I wish I had died as a baby, was said in a mocking tone in response to my depression when I expressed my desire to die. I was not comforted. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.